Good morning. It's Monday, November 3rd. The multi-front war in the Middle East is now 759 days old. I'm your host, Jonathan Schanzer. Welcome back yet again to the FTD Morning Brief. A quick bit of housekeeping here. I want to apologize for the technical issues we have experienced over the last 2 or 3 episodes. Our tech platform, which will remain nameless for the moment, has promised us that it is all resolved. If it is not, I'm going to get them placed on the Treasury sanctions list. I know a guy who knows a guy. All right, now to Israel. It didn't take long. Just weeks after the ceasefire, the ugly politics of the Jewish state come roaring back. Some seriously messy stuff in Israel right now. Israeli military advocate general Yifat Tomer Yerushalmi was arrested yesterday and is now in custody after leaking video of what appeared to be abuse of Palestinian prisoners in an Israeli jail last year. The episode is essentially the Israeli version of the U.S. scandal at Abu Ghraib during the Iraq War. Perhaps it's just a byproduct of war, these ugly episodes, but that doesn't make them any easier to grasp, and I'm certainly not okay with it. Israel will now deal with the political fallout stemming from this breach of public trust, and there's two. One on the part of the Israeli military advocate general for leaking, and the other for the soldiers who committed this horrific abuse. More on that, I'm sure, in the days to come. 30 years ago yesterday, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was shot and killed. I remember the day well. I was a year out of college, and I believed in the two-state solution. Yitzhak Rabin was the embodiment of Israel. He was tough and leathery. He wore the scars of battle with a fierce pride. He didn't trust Yasser Arafat or the Palestinian Authority, but he wanted to give Israel a chance to live in peace. Yigal Amir never gave him or Israel a chance. When Rabin died, the Oslo process went on life support. Then, 5 years later, just as I was wrapping up my time as a grad student in Israel, the peace process collapsed. The outbreak of the Second Intifada, just as Israel offered the Palestinians a state, was perhaps the most frustrating moment I can recall as a young student of this conflict. Arafat's rejection of peace would prove to be the end of the two-state solution as we knew it. Today, the international community is trying to revive the Palestinian Authority and the two-state solution with it. I think the idea has as much chance as a snow cone in the Sinai, but if this two-state solution thing is ever going to have a chance, I'll tell you one thing. The current PA president, Mahmoud Abbas, has to bounce. And the next guy can't be the mass murderer, Marwan Barghouti. The Palestinians need a Martin Luther King, a Mahatma Gandhi, a Nelson Mandela, or, dare I say it, a Yitzhak Rabin. I'd love to see it, but I'm not holding my breath. All right, it was a weekend filled with news. We all got to keep up. So here's your quick Monday morning news roundup. Hamas sent 3 bodies to Israel, but there was only one problem. They weren't the bodies of Israelis. The Israelis were fuming with rage. I was watching on the news, a lot of anger. That included, by the way, the hostage families. Until recently, they directed most of their ire at the government of Benjamin Netanyahu. Not so much anymore. It's not as if they've just forgiven him for everything, but right now, their ire is directed at Hamas. The group sent another 3 bodies to Israel yesterday, and these were actual hostages. So that now leaves 8 Israeli bodies left in Gaza. Every last one of them needs to return home if there is any chance of lasting quiet in the Middle East, and I don't think that is appreciated enough. Downright bizarre news yesterday about the Red Cross, Israel, and Hamas having some kind of a dialogue. Hamas wants to get its fighters that are in tunnels on the Israeli side of the yellow line back into Hamas-controlled territory, and they're trying to negotiate with the Red Cross in Israel in order to allow that to happen. Why Israel would want to allow for this while the terrorist group continues to hold dead hostages and wage psychological warfare on the Israeli public is absolutely beyond me. Still scratching my head on that. Let me just say this. If there are hostages on the other side of the yellow line, and if the Israelis are able to locate them, they should arrest them. They should put them in jail. They should hold them in custody until those final 8 are finally released. Those hostages need to be released in order for any of this to happen. Why Israel would just actually pave the way with the Red Cross, which has done nothing for 2 years, why they would allow for this to happen makes no sense to me whatsoever. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard is slated to be in Israel today for meetings. Not a lot of detail on this visit, but it's got my attention. Israel doesn't need much help regarding intelligence about Hamas or Hezbollah. Iran and Yemen, on the other hand, well, that's where the U.S. has things that Israel may not have. I would actually probably add Iraq to that. So stay tuned. There's a lot going on here right now. Let's see what Tulsi Gabbard comes back with and what she says while she is in Israel. Reports emerged over the weekend that the Iran-backed Shiite militias in Iraq could be gearing up for another round of fighting with Israel. This would be, well, not good. You'll recall that the militias sat out the June war between Israel and Iran. They kept their powder dry. They were the dog that didn't bark. I could not explain why the Iraqi militias were not fighting as this war was raging all around the Middle East. That means that they are relatively intact right now. They've got thousands of fighters and thousands of projectiles. And now we're seeing reports that China is replenishing Iran's missile stockpiles. So yes, I'm watching this space with some trepidation. I continue to hear out of Israel that another round between Israel and Iran, and perhaps some of its proxies, is a matter of when and not if. And that is obviously not something that anybody in Israel wants. You get a sense right now that the Israelis are trying to keep their powder dry as well. They don't want to thrust Israel into yet another round of serious conflict. The country's tired. So Israel's trying to wait, but every minute, every day, every week that they wait is more danger accruing for Israel. And that is, of course, obviously not something that Israel is going to relish. By the way, I would also just note that today there was reports in the Times of Israel, just came out right before the show began, that Israel is now, or Benjamin Netanyahu rather, is saying that Israel needs to have an army that doesn't just defend, doesn't just contain, but rather they need an army that can conduct military operations further afield. And that's obviously a change of Israel's doctrine. It used to be the Israel Defense Forces. I can imagine they're going to have to think about a different kind of name right now as they think about how they can go further afield into places like Iraq or Syria or Yemen or Iran. That's not just defense, that's preemption. And that's an interesting thing as well. And finally, I am painfully aware of the fact that there is an election coming up in New York. Some viewers of this program have asked me why I haven't weighed in on this guy. This guy, of course, is somebody who I'm not going to mention on this program. The answer is simple, because FDD is a nonprofit and we avoid elections like the Wuhan Virology Institute. We just don't talk about it. But I did notice a tweet yesterday from Jeremy Corbyn, the raging anti-Semite from the UK. We all know who he is. He's across the pond tweeting yesterday and exhorting his 2.5 million viewers to help Manhattan's socialist candidate cross the finish line. If that's not foreign influence in an American election, I don't know what is. So here, paging DOJ, please pick up the white courtesy phone. I would like you to maybe look into the fact that you've got foreigners trying to get involved right now in our elections in New York, the largest city in America. Seriously, how are we letting this happen? All right. Today's guest was supposed to be Ahmed Fuad Al-Khatib. This is the Gaza-born guy. He was based in the United States, senior fellow over at the Atlantic Council. He leads an initiative called the Realign for Palestine, and he had a lot to say about Gaza. We don't know what happened to him today. So right now, I am not sure who's going to pop up on the program, but whoever it is, I'm going to welcome them onto the show. All right, we got David May. I love how this works. And look, we're wearing the same outfit, which is super cool. David May, for everybody who needs to know, this is a research analyst here at FDD. He's been working on the UN system in particular. Just came out with a terrific memo on the systemic pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel, and dare I say it, anti-Semitic culture at the United Nations. So welcome to the program, David May.
Thank you, John. I've never had you so excited to see me.
You know what? When we go live, it scares the heck out of me, but that's what makes this program worth watching, in my view. If we all could just pre-record everything and we knew what was going to happen, would it really be that exciting? I think not. All right. So, David, you have this new report that came out, and I'd like you to just tell folks, what is it that you were looking into here? These are the many bodies at the UN that are dedicated to just pretty much one thing, and it's beating Israel over the head and promoting the Palestinian cause. So tell us about the report.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different bodies within the UN that are dedicated to scrutinizing Israel. This one in particular that I co-authored with my colleague Ben Cohen, we looked into the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People. I'll just call them the CEIRPP. It's a mouthful.
Beautiful
Uh,
acronym, really just rolls off the tongue.
we can try CurePip, but that's a little weirder.
Yeah.
But so it was founded. It's initiated in 1975, and it was created through the same at the same session where the Zionism is Racism Resolution 3376 was founded. It was created to declare that the national project of the Jews is inherently racist. And though that resolution was rescinded in 1991, the mechanism, the infrastructure that was created through that same ideology continues to this day. So they created this committee. They also created Division for Palestinian Rights in order to actualize the mandate of that committee. And so throughout the years, they've done many things in terms of having this highlighted, this extra scrutiny on Israel. And one of the main things that they have is an international day of solidarity with the Palestinian people that has turned into an anti-Israel circus. And the other thing that's interesting in my portfolio is that it was actually pretty instrumental in launching the BDS campaign in the early 2000s. They would gather different NGOs to come out with a solution. How do we criticize Israel's human rights record? That's being very generous. It was a campaign to undermine the sovereign equality of a UN state. And so they came out with this BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanction targeting campaign.
Okay, so a lot to unpack there. The one thing that always kind of cracks me up is that there's an international day for the Palestinians. It feels like if you're at the UN, every day is the day to honor or promote the Palestinian cause. It almost feels like they need a day for Israel, just one out of the 365. But so in light of this track record, right, all these different resolutions coming out to condemn Israel, all these different floor statements. I mean, it's a nonstop drumbeat of anti-Israel activity. How much money do you have a sense of how much money is being spent by the UN? Like, what is the budget for this right now? When we talk about these many bodies that are engaged in this activity, is there like, I mean, can we even estimate this right now? Because the US, we spend what 20% or we cover 20% of the UN's budget. So that means we're paying for 20% of this. That's kind of insane. So what does that look like? Do you have any sense?
Yes, so I would just say back to the International Day of Solidarity, it's also ironic that it's on November 29th, which is the anniversary of the partition plan, the one that the Jews accepted, the Arabs didn't, and somehow the fatal mistake of not accepting a two-state solution in 1947 is cause for solidarity with the Palestinian cause. But onto the numbers, it's around $5 million or so, $5-6 million a year. The UN budget's a little opaque. But also that's just money that's going directly to those organizations. There's a lot of side ancillary support coming from their Department of Global Communications and other different event planning bodies. So whatever number we have in terms of going to the Palestinian specific bodies, that's the floor, not the ceiling. So around 6 million a year. The U.S. is covering around 22% of the UN budget, and even though we have on the books U.S. laws preventing our money from going to those specific Palestinian bodies, money's fungible. So even if you withhold some money from the UN from one place, it's still going in another.
Yeah. And by the way, so we talk about this, right? And these specific kind of bureaucratic entities within the UN, but then there's these other bodies within the UN that are as bad, if not worse. The Human Rights Council, the UNIFIL, UNRWA. I mean, so let's talk about that wider network of bodies that are all, making life difficult for Israel every day.
Yeah, so in terms of the Human Rights Council, so they have more resolutions targeting Israel than the rest of the world combined. They have a special agenda item 7 dedicated to scrutinizing Israel at every session that it holds. It holds 3 sessions a year. And so through that, there's all this extra scrutiny on Israel. But they also have a rapporteur, Francesca Albanese, who her special rapporteur mandate is the only one that's open-ended of all the Human Rights Council mandates. And it has, not surprisingly, a history of people with controversies of anti-Semitism. So she, in particular, in 2014, issued a few statements decrying the Jewish lobby, advocating on behalf of Israel. And so now she's doing this global tour. She's actually under US sanctions, but she's doing this global tour. She was in South Africa, getting the South African government, giving them encouragement and having this, trying to basically coordinate this campaign against Israel, using all these terms like colonialism and apartheid and things that are clearly not appropriate, but they do have certain cachet with her audiences. And she's really at the forefront of trying to get Israelis banned and arrested throughout the world for serving their country. She was
just sanctioned by the U.S. And she's going around crying about it because she was actually trying to stop American businesses from working with Israel. She wanted them sanctioned at the UN. And the U.S. said, no, sorry. I mean, that's the one thing that you can't do with Donald Trump, right? You start going after American businesses, Donald Trump's going to go after you. So she gets dinged with this, and now she's crying about it publicly everywhere she goes because she can't go to her flat in Washington any longer. That I guess that's now seized assets, which is kind of rich, and I have no sympathy for her. Tell us about some of these other agencies, though.
Yeah, so if we're looking at the broader things, they shouldn't have a mandate to, scrutinize Israel unfairly. But we have the World Health Organization. They have a special agenda item dedicated to scrutinizing Israel during the height of the COVID pandemic. They dedicated one of their 8-day session, one of their days, to scrutinizing Israel. They also have a laughable agenda item or angle of criticizing the human right, the health rights in the Golan Heights. And this was amid the height of the Syrian civil war, that they're criticizing Israel with a modern first world health system and criticizing them for providing that to the citizens or the people living in the Golan.
Yeah, and just so folks are aware at home. I mean, first of all, not targeting the Chinese Communist Party amidst the COVID pandemic was insane, right? And then going after Israel during that same time period was doubly insane, and I think just continued to shine a light on the hypocrisy of the United Nations. And then when you look at the Syrian civil war, yeah, the Israelis were actually one of the few countries that were providing assistance. They were doing it for their own reasons. They were trying to actually have people cross the border. They learned a little bit about what was happening while they were treating people, and then they sent them back in when they were ready, when they were healthy. But still, the fact that they were providing this support was rare at a time where everybody seemed to kind of ignore the entire civil war, where hundreds of thousands of people were killed, hundreds of thousands more were displaced. Anyway, I digress. Back to you.
Yeah, so I think one thing that you were touching on is whether it is holding Israel to a double standard, if it's anti-Semitic in nature because it views Israel as the Jew among the nations, or if it's just China and other autocratic countries using it to its advantage to distract from their human rights records. Functionally, it doesn't really matter. The same result is that Israel is getting targeted excessively, and it also comes at the expense of preventing human rights disasters and addressing them across the globe. We have, a genocide occurring in Sudan, and we don't have people lining up the streets, marching and protesting. Perhaps all their energy was spent on the war in Gaza. But this is what we see throughout, is Israel's being used as a tool, and it's actually to the detriment of people throughout the globe who would be better served by human rights functioning bodies that could actually address those issues. And instead, they're just being, at least excessively being used toward Israel.
Yeah. I don't know if this is your bailiwick, but I've been hearing lately about a possible UN Security Council resolution that would try to lock in some of the Trump 20-point plan. But I'm also hearing that you have a lot of people that don't want to do that from kind of the other side, right? I think the Israelis would like to lock that in. The U.S. would like to lock that in, but you're not seeing a lot of enthusiasm on the part of the rank and file at the UN. Can you tell us why that would be the case?
Yeah, so I think this is kind of the typical Middle Eastern autocratic response to calls for reform, is that there's an upfront concession, there's an upfront promise of reform, of change, of addressing the issues at hand, and then they wait for time to to distract people, for people to forget about it. And so for Hamas, for Hamas and its enablers, Hamas, there's no real reason for them to engage with this. Unless of course they cared about the Palestinian people, which they don't. But this 20-point plan calls for their dismantlement. It calls for them to be disempowered. And so, their goal here is just to delay and to stall as much as they can. This is what we had, during the Arab Spring, with all the different places that rose up and where it got really hot. There were promises of reform, and then as soon as the monarchs or the autocrats were feeling more empowered, those reforms went away. This is what we had in Iran as well, with the Women Life Freedom protest. There were initial concessions, and then as soon as it faded out, we're back to the beginning. So this is, I think, just another example of that.
Yeah, Lucy and the football. All right, real quick, just remind everybody the name of the report that you and Ben Cohen wrote on the UN, just so they can find it on our website.
That's a great question.
That's okay. We'll find it. We'll post it. We'll make sure that everybody knows. But the guy doesn't even know the name of the report. That's amazing.
I promise I wrote it.
Okay, I know you did. Okay. Last question for you before I let you go. The work that you've done on sports washing, if you will, the kinds of things that you've been tracking, where you have other, I guess, international bodies that are trying to target Israel, block them from participation, whether it's wrestling, whether it's soccer. Just tell us a little bit about that file that you track.
Yeah, so this is a decades-long process of trying to exclude Israel from the sporting world. This started in the 50s, 60s with Israel having a dominant soccer team in the Asian Football Confederation, them getting kicked out because it was unsafe and because Arab and Muslim countries refused to compete. Now we've had this phenomenon of where either countries' athletes will refuse to participate against Israel, they'll intentionally forfeit. But now that hasn't been enough. They're actually trying to go and kick Israel out of these different sporting bodies, though it's, it goes against the ideals of sportsmanship and fair play. And they've been trying to compare Israel to Russia, even though Russia launched this illegal invasion of Ukraine, whereas Israel is responding to an illegal invasion conducted by Hamas. But they're trying to put Israel in this Russia category. And in any case, Russia has re-entered most of those sporting bodies anyways. But so this is where we are. They were nearly kicked out of UEFA, the European Football or Soccer Federation. And if not for the Trump ceasefire plan, they probably would have been. And so this is just another example of trying to single out, isolate, demonize Israelis and make them unwelcome in the global community.
Yeah, truly an unbelievable campaign, and it continues, singling out Israel. David May, you've been following it at the UN. You're following it across the various sports entities worldwide. So keep up the good work. And thanks for jumping on real quick and joining us today on the FDD Morning Brief.
Thanks for having me, John.
All right, I'm sweating a little bit less here. That was always a little dicey here when we go live and things happen. Most of the time you won't see it, but this one you kind of did. Anyway, it's time to drop the mic here. If you're craving some more smart things to read today, check out the expert analysis on our website, fdd.org, and across all of our socials. And yes, folks, you still can make that Q4 generous tax-deductible donation at fdd.org/invest. We certainly would value you for doing so. Tune in Wednesday for another episode of the FDD Morning Brief. We'll be live again. You never know what's going to happen. Until then, I'm Jonathan Schanzer, signing off for FDD.